I'm still, yeah.
Great.
We're recording.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I'm glad to be out here tonight. There's a lot of people here. I didn't think there would be this many folks here. So I don't know if this is a normal meeting for you guys or not, but this is awesome to see everybody here. We're going to talk today about Bitwarden a little bit. So we'll go ahead and advance here. So who am I? So I'll do my introduction just based on my slide here. But I'm Kyle Spearrin. I'm the founder of Bitwarden. And I'm really excited to be here to speak with you guys today. I am, even though I'm the founder of Bitwarden and work in kind of an executive role in the company today, I'm also an engineer. So I consider myself a software engineer. When someone asks what I do for a living, that's what I tell them. I started Bitwarden about 10 years ago. I'm also a lifelong long-time self-hoster and tinkerer and home labber and all those kind of things. So I think you'll see kind of a lot of the foundations of how Bitwarden was built also play into that a little bit. Hopefully it resonates with you guys. I also live here in Northeast Florida. I grew up here. I grew up in Nassau County area, and now I reside in St. John's area. So what is Bitwarden? I'm guessing maybe some of you know what Bitwarden is, but Bitwarden's a password management solution. We really have two products. We have password management and a secrets management product as well. And we cover a lot of use cases, and we have a lot of customers and users. So at scale, we have about 15 million users on the platform today. That's really our cloud platform. It's really all the visibility we have into. We also support around 90,000 business organizations and customers of our product. And those scale from anywhere from small tech companies, startup companies, to Fortune 100 companies, to the highest levels of federal government, and everything in between. As you can imagine, anyone who uses the internet and a computer needs to manage passwords and secrets, and our product serves those needs to all our customers. We're also a global company. I think half of our business comes from Europe. Probably a quarter comes from the United States and a quarter from everywhere else in the world. So passwords are not something, they're universal to everyone in the world as well, as you can imagine. So with that, our product's also translated into 60+ languages. A lot of that is community driven and really plays well into what we also are, which is an open source product as well. Bitwarden also, as you can imagine, is a password management tool. You need your products to run everywhere you need your passwords, which is any kind of client or tool you might want to use, including Mac, Windows, and Linux, and mobile on iOS and Android, every kind of web browser you may use, command line interface. We support all of those as really important first-class clients of our product and what we do. So that's a little about me and about Bitwarden. And please feel free to jump in with any questions or anything along the way. We'll have some Q&A at the end too if you want to save your question. But if you have any questions about any of the slides or clarification on anything, just raise your hand and we can answer some of those as well. I work with a big team at our company. I currently lead our product and engineering organizations. Matt runs our architecture group. He reports up under me. But we also have product and engineering and IT and all kind of stuff reports under my organization at the company. Can everybody hear me okay? I asked for a mic, but I think we're all right in a small enough room. I'm really glad to have this fan here because it's pretty warm in here too. So what are we going to talk about today? So what is this talk? This is really a technical walkthrough of self-hosting Bitwarden. We're going to go through a live deployment of Bitwarden, and we're going to talk about how Bitwarden's built, how it supports self-hosting, how it came to support self-hosting, and also we're going to actually deploy and run Bitwarden on a Raspberry Pi that I brought over here just to show how it's done. This isn't a sales pitch to try to convince you to use Bitwarden or anything like that. I think it's just really cool tech, and I want to hopefully we can share and learn something together today. So just to kind of have a quick poll in the room to see kind of where we stand. Who self-hosts stuff at home today? All right, so maybe I'd say about half people. Who uses a password manager today? All right, so maybe a little bit more. It's maybe 80%, 70, 80%. Who uses both, or who self-hosts a password manager? I guess would maybe the way I would want to ask. All right. And maybe the last question: who uses Bitwarden as their password manager? All right. All right, great. Well, that's exciting to see, and I think, as you'll learn about Bitwarden today, I think we resonate a lot with the technical crowd and with Linux users and other things like that, because we are an open source product and one of the few in there that I would say one of the more popular ones. So when we get into talking about self-hosting, self-hosting is not always the answer, and is not always something you maybe want to do. And definitely maybe something you don't want to do with a password manager in certain situations. But maybe you really do want to do it. And there's really reasons to do it, and there's reasons not to do it. Bitwarden as a company, we're completely agnostic to that choice. We try to educate you on the reasons why you might want to do it and reasons why you might not want to do it, and let you make that decision yourself. The good news is Bitwarden serves both of those areas. So we have a cloud-hosted product, and we have the ability to self-host in whatever way you would like. So when we look at reasons why you want to self-host, these are really reasons that a lot of our customers choose, and what we've learned over the years. One of the top reasons is really security posture, and really being able to host like your password management tool in an air-gapped environment. So this is really important in government institutions in a lot of cases, military, where exposure to the internet is a critical risk that they can't take, especially when you're dealing with secrets and passwords and those kind of things. Data and sovereignty. As I mentioned, we're a global company. We're a U.S. company, but we serve global markets. A lot of folks don't want anything to do with the U.S. and things hosted in the U.S., and we're okay with that as well. We also have an EU cloud data center as well. People can make that choice if they're in the EU or other things. But say you're in some really particular district like France. Okay, well, our EU environment's hosted in the Netherlands, so maybe you need data sovereignty in France for some reason. Self-hosting is a really good, easy answer that we can provide to customers that need data sovereignty. And they have a few other here. I don't want to go through all of them. I guess I'll mention compliance. Compliance is another really important reason, and it's also was kind of foundational to early success of Bitwarden and those kind of things. I can remember having calls with customers in the early days where they're asking me about FIPS 140 requirements and all these kind of things, and it was kind of blowing my mind. I didn't really know what they were talking about. But we were able to sign those customers up as, we were able to land those as customers anyways, because we had self-hosting options. So they're trying to meet FedRAMP requirements and those kind of things, which we didn't have. We're actually going through FedRAMP right now at Bitwarden, but we're still able to meet the demands of FedRAMP requirements of customers because they are able to self-host themselves and bring that into the domain of their FedRAMP environments. So let's also talk about when you might not want to self-host. When you self-host comes a lot of responsibility in managing that instance, especially when you're talking about a business setting or something like that where it's really important and you have to account for a lot of things. You become the ops team of that instance. When you're in the cloud, we're running everything for you and handling backups and security and all those kind of things. But if you're running it yourself, you're completely responsible for that. There's a lot more that goes into the security of an application than just the code that's running an application. And you become the responsible party. As I say, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So with self-hosting gives you a lot of power, but also a lot of responsibility associated with that. You own the security of those things. Hardening your servers and your network and patching and keeping things up to date is really important. You don't want to, we're issuing updates on a bi-weekly basis in our product, and you don't want to become stale and miss out on some really important security update. And those kind of, especially when you're talking about something that's storing and managing all your passwords and keys and things like that. Backups and uptime, those things are really hard to get right we spend millions of dollars a year in our organization, providing resiliency to our cloud-hosted environment that meets the demands of our customers. When you host our product yourself, that's part of your responsibility as well. So let's talk a little bit about how Bitwarden's built and how it operates and how maybe some of the risks of self-hosting aren't necessarily, I wouldn't say things you have to worry about, but are reduced just because of the architecture of how Bitwarden's designed. Bitwarden itself is really composed of two, I would say, pieces of software. You have your client device and you have a server. The way Bitwarden's is designed and operated is through an end-to-end zero-knowledge type principle. So what the server is really hosting is just encrypted data. It doesn't have access to any of that data or the ability to decrypt or read any of the plain text information of stored passwords. So really, there's a lot of functionality that exists within our clients, and a lot of the work that goes to power the application is in the clients that you're running yourselves. So, the server is really responsible for just synchronizing encrypted blob data between servers. Between clients in different ways. So the server does do a lot of stuff, but in terms of basic password management and managing the encrypted vaults, the server is kind of a dumb server. All it's doing is just synchronizing data and understanding relationships of data between people who have access to data. But it doesn't manage the data in any kind of raw way. The servers do that, and they encrypt it as blobs before they ship it off to the server and doing those things. And that's a really important design for a couple of reasons. One is it creates a scenario where we can develop a product that works in an offline mode. So, a server being down is not the end of the world for your clients, because if you're already connected and been using your product like most people use, you can read your vault and access all your data even if a server is offline or down or something like that. Writing to your vault does require online capabilities because it has to write back up to the server to keep everything in sync. But in read-only mode and unlocking your vault and browsing your vault and getting access to your passwords operates in a completely offline fashion. And that's because our clients are so self-contained in its functionality, what it needs, and it doesn't need a dependency on the server to do those things. It's also really important from a security standpoint. A compromised server doesn't necessarily mean a compromised vault. We operate in a way that assumes your data could be compromised at some point in the future because of a security breach or something on our side that could happen, and does happen. It hasn't happened to date with Bitwarden, and it's something we're really proud of, but we plan for that, and we design and develop our architecture assuming that if our servers are compromised, doesn't necessarily mean that user vaults are compromised in those ways. And we do a lot to make sure those kind of things happen. So let's move on and talk about open source a little bit. So Bitwarden has been designed as an open source product from the very beginning. It was a conscious decision that I made very early on in the first launch of Bitwarden back in 2016. And it was mainly developed around the need for establishing trust and transparency in the product. So I thought it was really important, especially as a newcomer to the industry at that time. How am I going to establish trust and gain users of using the product, especially a product that's asking people to store all their passwords in it, in a cloud environment and other things that, I didn't come to the table with a lot of credentials that established, that automatically allowed people to trust me. And I thought open source would be a really good solution to that problem. Turns out it was a really good solution and helped us get off the ground and win a lot of the trust of people like you in establishing our first set of users. Open source is also really important. As I mentioned, the aspects of being open and being trusted allow things like others to view and audit the source code. And it's a really important part of what we do here. It allows our customers at the highest levels to see and vet our solutions in ways that they want to. They don't have to do it from a black box kind of point of view. They could come in and browse the source code and verify that our solutions meet their needs. It also really opens up the ability for others to audit from third parties. Not only our customers, but people that we hire. We hire on multiple times a year third parties to audit our code base, and we publish those reports. Open source has established kind of a value at the company of transparency and trust, and that extends beyond just our source code in a lot of ways. When we do these source code audits and those kind of things, we publish all these on our website for people like you and our customers to see as well, and our responses to those. Yeah, we also have a HackerOne program that we work with very closely, and it enables those folks, to be a lot more successful in their job at finding vulnerabilities in our code base and reporting those to us. And I think is really what's helped us level up our level of security over the past 10 years, where we haven't had significant incidents that maybe others have. So we've been, as I mentioned, open source from the beginning. But let's kind of go back to the beginning of the origins of Bitwarden and how it came to be. So as I mentioned, Bitwarden started as an open source project from the beginning. I was really, I would say in the beginning, I didn't launch as a company. I launched as a project, and I was really launching as Kyle's password manager product. I thought I could build something interesting. I was a LastPass user for, I don't know, 10 years before I launched Bitwarden. Actually, probably not that long, but I don't know when LastPass started. But I was using it for quite a long time. And I really saw a lot of the value of how LastPass built their product versus other password managers in the industry. KeePass and others that I'm sure maybe a lot of you use too. There's a lot of value in those. But I saw how LastPass really created a turnkey solution, which was more of a, I would say, a password manager for the masses, for the world. And there was a lot less friction and other things involved than trying to set up, a KeePass database, sync through, a file sharing system, and those kind of things, which really is a barrier to entry to a lot of people. So I looked at the landscape and I saw a lot of the kind of positives in the different solutions that existed in the market, including LastPass, including KeePass. And my idea was to kind of bring a lot of those values together. And when I launched, best way I can describe it is I wanted to launch the open source version of LastPass. That was the way I thought about when building the first versions of Bitwarden. I didn't have a whole lot of experience in the open source world before I launched Bitwarden. I took it as a strategy of just transparency, and being a software developer, I had a lot of interactions with just consuming open source in a lot of ways. But I'd published open source libraries and things like that for .NET, and I'm a .NET developer, so I did some stuff in that world. But I never had launched like a full product in the open source world. And there was a lot for me to learn in that process, as I have learned over the 10 years. And a lot of that was just the community aspect that comes along with open source. It was a really interesting and something we're still learning to this day, but I've learned a lot since then. And what I've learned is that feedback of what the kind of community you build. When you do open source, it's you're doing it. You're kind of giving something to the world as there's a lot of generosity involved, I would say, and that comes from the product that is open source. But then generosity comes back from the community of the users and consumers of your product. And what I learned is really listening to that feedback and community or feedback from the community, and really helping shape the way the product should be built. And when I first launched the first versions of Bitwarden, self-hosting was not a thing that I immediately understood should be done. I was just trying to create a SaaS-hosted product that published its source code so people could see how it was done and other things. But what I learned is one of the most valuable things that you can learn that I've learned from doing it as related to Bitwarden was self-hosting and how that came to be. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So when I launched the product, I started having people browsing the GitHub repos and opening issues and doing things and reporting things like I would expect. But what I also learned was there were people that were trying to run the product themselves. They were, which if you wanted to develop on the product, yeah, you want to do in kind of a local environment. That's what I was expecting. But then I realized there were people that were trying to like run this as a service themselves. They were trying to self-host. And at first I was like, why are they trying to do this? This is kind of, I already hosted it for you. Why do you want to do that? We talked about a lot of the reasons earlier about why you want to self-host, and I started to learn those over the years. There were these people in financial environments and in the government, NASA, that were trying to run my product themselves. And I was like, wow, this seems like an opportunity. Like, I didn't realize people want to do this. Is like a big differentiator of what I'm providing that doesn't exist in the market. The community was really asking, the experience I had at the first was not really a documented experience or anything. People were just trying to do it. And what I understood was we needed to create a first-class experience around being able to self-host and really make it a supported first-class feature of the product. So did a lot of work in defining, documenting, and making it easy for people to deploy the infrastructure of what Bitwarden was as a server. So a lot of that required me to go back and rethink. There was a lot of pent-up knowledge in my mind. Oh, I know how to deploy this to Azure is where we were hosting it in the cloud and run it there. But how can I make it in a way, how can I teach people how to run it themselves? They're not just going to run it the way I'm using a lot of Azure services and other things like that. They want to be able to run it on their machine or in AWS or in any kind of cloud environment or on a Raspberry Pi. These are all things that we've evolved over time, but really trying to understand how to abstract kind of the dependencies that I created in the product in a way that weren't dependencies anymore and people can make the choices on those dependencies. So really it required architecting the code in a way that allowed a self-hoster to kind of plug in whatever kind of configuration they wanted. And one, that required a lot of documentation, but it also required structuring the code in a way that made that kind of pluggable in a way that I didn't have to support all these different configurations and ways. It allowed a user to kind of come in and still have one code base and that had all these options and opportunities and how you could run it. Also, self-hosting, at least the way I was doing it at the time, required a lot of knowledge and skill in being able to do that. And I think you still need a lot of skill, and I wouldn't recommend self-hosting your password manager if you don't know what you're doing. But it was really important from a business point of view and customer point of view that it was very fast and simple to show that you can self-host Bitwarden, and it's not that daunting of a thing to think about that you could do. So there was a lot of scripting and things that went into wrapping the installation process of Bitwarden to make it very easy to deploy in a self-hosted way. This was when Docker and containerization was relatively new in the early days. It wasn't right on the cutting edge. It had pretty much established itself. But from the very beginning, I chose to wrap the way you self-host Bitwarden in a containerized way because that really created the best and simplest experience on being able to deploy a kind of pre-configured environment that I had kind of structured for our users.
We deploy it the same way for our cloud as well. We run containers.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. It was really, I didn't want to create a lot of dead code that was not like stuff that I needed to use or maybe someone ever used. I wanted to try to build this in a way that was really universal to how people would deploy it. So the first version of how you launch Bitwarden, or how I offered to self-host Bitwarden, was really just a mirror of how I was hosting it in a cloud infrastructure. And really to this day, that's still one of the options we offer. We call it our standard deployment, and it's really the full stack of what makes up Bitwarden. And there's a lot of components to that. You have to remember, we're running a large-scale SaaS product here with millions of users and tens of thousands of business customers. And it's a multi-tenant solution. So all these people are in one database in one environment. We do have multiple environments in the EU and US, but our US environment supports probably 13 million people, on it. So it has to be very highly scalable, and maybe not how you would just run, you know, a product that you're running on your machine or on a Raspberry Pi. So there's a lot of components to go into that we scale in different ways to meet the demands of the scale of our product. And these are all listed here. So, you know, I may have even missed some of them, probably have, but there's 9 components, or no, there's 12 components listed here on the screen. And I'll go through a few of these just so you can kind of understand what all these components are and how they relate to running what is the Bitwarden server. So all these things make up what we call the Bitwarden server that exists. That's our API. So this is really just the traditional API that clients are talking to on a day-to-day basis to synchronize vault data, to update your vaults and share data with other users, those kind of things. So that's really a core. I would say the API is the biggest core part of what makes up the Bitwarden server. We have an identity server that runs on Bitwarden, and this is what handles authentication of users and brokers a lot of authentication throughout our platform, whether it's through API keys or through logging in with your master password, et cetera. I'm going from left to right here and then down. Our admin portal is really the administrative portal that you need as the operator of the server. So not the admin of the product, but the admin of the server. So this is where you would go, and this was really built out of demand for myself operating the cloud platform. You know, I'm doing customer support now with all these users, and they need me to go, you know, delete their account or fix their billing information or something like that. This was the admin portal is where I log in to do all that thing, and it's still to this day is where all of our customer support team, you know, if you need a billing issue fixed on your account, they log in, look up your account, make changes to your account, or can do things to your account, and can fix things. Well, as the administrator of a server yourself, you also need those abilities, and that's exposed in the stack that we allow you to deploy on your platform. Now, we do change the experience a little bit, whether it's our SaaS platform versus yours, because you don't need to go manage billing for people and those kind of things. So, you know, we strip some things out, but it's the same component of our product that you use, because you may want to delete a user out of your database, and you don't want to like go into SQL and start running SQL commands. It'd be nice to have an interface where you can look up users and delete them and do those kind of things, adjust settings of your platform and whatnot. SSO is another kind of service and component of our platform. This is really kind of getting into enterprise features and other things, but this is kind of a proxy for managing enterprise SSO authentication into Bitwarden. We have an icon server, so when you're browsing your vault and you're seeing an item and there's an icon of Google next to that item called Google in your account, we have a proxy service that looks up favicons on the internet to make your vault experience look better. We have a notification server that's really handling a lot of the real-time synchronization between all your clients. So you have clients that kind of long poll servers on for new data and updates, but that happens like every 10 hours. You know, it's like, oh, server, is there anything new that I don't have, you know, in my vault? Let me update that. Because remember, clients are operating in a client offline mode first, so it's reading local data. It's not talking to the server every time it needs to look up something in your vault. So clients need to be synchronized. And it does that in a kind of a long polling way, but our notification server helps make that more real time. So we use services like SignalR and push notifications to, you know, when you make a change on one client, it automatically propagates into your other client, so you see that update happen. We have an events pipeline for logging data and client-side driven events. These are really important in enterprise scenarios where audit logging and other things of how your users in your organization are using the product and what passwords are accessed and when and those kind of things. Attachments is really just a file server for serving up binary attachment data that's attached to items in your vault. The web vault, the web is just the web version of our product. So when you go to vault.bitwarden.com, that's the web client. So you can access from any browser just by visiting the internet. That's packaged in, that's part of a server deliverable, even though it is a client product, but it has to be served over the internet. We have a SCIM product for managing SCIM. If you guys are familiar with SCIM technology, really just synchronizing, providing onboarding and provisioning of users. This really ties into the SSO aspect of our product quite well. And again, another kind of enterprise thing. The database, so the full stack of the product also ships with the database. So Bitwarden itself, from a technology point of view, is a .NET application. So it also is accompanied with a SQL Server database, and that's what powers Bitwarden. And our self-hosted kind of standard deployment ships with a SQL Server database. A lot of people change that out though to you don't have to use the database that ships with the container. You could use RDS or some other Azure SQL as your backing database if you want, and there's different ways. We also ship with a proxy, an Nginx proxy that really wraps all these services and exposes them as endpoints in different ways using a first-class HTTPS server. So as you can see, there's a lot of components that make up what is Bitwarden server. And really the goal, this is how the exact same way we serve our product in the cloud environment. And what we were trying to do is package that up in a way that now our customers can use in the exact same way we do. Because we have customers that have drastic needs for high availability and uptime and scalability in different ways that they're doing. I don't think any of our customers are operating to the same level of scale that we are in our cloud environment. But they really certainly have the same level of, in some scenarios, have the same level of high availability that they need. And componentizing these components of what make up the Bitwarden server in a way allow you to scale and grow and protect different aspects of the product in different ways. For example, it might be really much more important to make sure your API and your identity server are online more than maybe the admin portal that maybe your system administrator needs in different ways. So you can really protect and scale different parts of the product in different ways, as opposed to just kind of linearly. But what this also creates is a big behemoth of a thing that you have to run, right? And as you can see down at the bottom is just a quick screenshot. This is what it looks like when you deploy with Compose, or like all the containers running. I think there's probably actually more than that. This is an old screenshot. But you've got a lot of stuff running that consumes and needs a lot of resources to operate, right? And that's maybe not the kind of ideal environment of how maybe when you want to run this thing on a Raspberry Pi. It's going to explode, right? So as we've grown and learned over time, and so Bitwarden is not only meeting the needs of huge enterprise customers that need to, but we also have a lot of home labbers and stuff, and people like you who really enjoy using our product and want to do things like self-hosted product. And so that's really what led to the birth of what we now call Bitwarden Lite. So Bitwarden Lite is us taking a step back and saying, hey, like there's all these people that want to run Bitwarden in a lot smaller footprint. Like they don't want to use SQL Server that requires 4 gigs of RAM and have 15 container images running, because it's just not like what they expect. It's not what you expect. If you're someone who self-hosts things at home, a lot of what you expect is just Docker run one image and you got this cool thing running, right? And it's really neat and able to do. So we took a step back and said, well, how can we support like a much more lightweight deployment of what is the Bitwarden server? And our goals were, one, we didn't want to like rewrite everything and support like a whole nother code base of what we've done. We really stuck back and we're trying to like, how can we like, I wouldn't say re-architect, but in some ways we did, but repackage this in a way that makes sense, that doesn't, you have to remember, we have to maintain all this stuff. So too, we're trying to figure out how to maintain all these different ways of running Bitwarden. So the solution we came up with was really taking another containerization approach. So what we were doing before is we had all these components that we really assigned their own containers to, which is really the kind of traditional proper way, I would say, of how you do containerization in a complex like server environment. But the kind of strategy of how we could do this was instead of running one container per process, what if we could take all those processes and still run them as multiple processes, but within one container itself, but just in one container? So we created this thing called Bitwarden Lite, which is a single Docker container, which uses a supervisor to run a bunch of other processes within that container, which are all the instances of the things you saw on the previous page. Now, what that still leads is a lot of processes still running within one container, which may still explode, maybe depending on your resource limitations and those kind of things. But it reduces a lot of the overhead of multiple containers running, which is also significant. But we also decided to provide a lot of configuration that allowed people who are like home labbers to turn off all these enterprise features and other containers that you don't maybe need. You don't, if you're running at home for your family, you probably don't need SSO and events pipelines and all those, and SCIM and all these kind of things. So we really architected a configuration platform that allowed you to really tune the server deployment to your expectations or limitations of the environment that you wanted to run it in. A really big component, this is probably one of the biggest components of the shift that we took, was we had this big deployment, this big dependency on SQL Server. And if you want to run Bitwarden on a Raspberry Pi, I don't know if you can do it today, but good luck if you want to put SQL Server on there and try to do it. Now, Raspberry Pis are a lot more powerful than they used to be, and SQL servers come a lot further along in a way in being cross-platform and things. But especially in the early days, that was like something you didn't think of as being possible, right? And it's also not in the spirit of being light either, I would say. So we also had this huge demand of people to just be like, why can't I use Postgres with Bitwarden? I already have a home lab with Postgres. I don't want to use SQL Server. SQL Server is not FOSS. I want to use this stuff. So we really wanted to support that. And that was really, again, kind of coming back to hearing all this feedback from the community, open source community, allowed us to help understand. And we responded in a way that helped support those use cases. So being a .NET application, there's a data access layer called Entity Framework, if any of you are familiar with it. And it's really an ORM that helps you abstract the data access layer from a database. And we spent a lot of time retrofitting our code base to support Entity Framework as another supported data access layer in the product. And by supporting Entity Framework, we could automatically support all these great databases that everyone wanted to use. So Postgres and MySQL and SQL Server. We actually still support SQL Server so when you choose to use SQL Server, it actually doesn't go down our path of Entity Framework. It goes down our normal, the same way we host and support SQL Server in the cloud, which is not Entity Framework. But you could also support SQL Server through Entity Framework. And then last but not least, SQLite is being an option that you could use through Entity Framework. Entity Framework was really a powerful tool that allowed us to open up those possibilities to our product. And when we deploy Bitwarden on a Pi here soon, you'll see we're using SQLite because that's the probably lightest option you can use. But if you're already running a home lab with Postgres and you have that because you're supporting a bunch of other databases, I would just use that because that's one less thing that machine has to manage and deal with. And you probably have backups and other things already accounted for through that data access layer. So you saw on the previous screen what a Docker deployment looked like here at the bottom. When you run Bitwarden Lite, this is now what your containers look like, which is a lot nicer and smaller. And also allows you to have a much smaller footprint on the environment that you're running in. So really, when we look at the architecture that we just covered, we end up now with 3 options about how Bitwarden operates. And all these operate, again, out of the same code base and out of the same product. What we're doing is just packaging it in different ways for people to consume. The first option is the cloud. It's what we're consuming and what we're delivering in our environment. So we have our cloud-hosted environment. The other is the full stack kind of standard deployment. That was what we talked about, which is really just mirroring our cloud deployment options and providing that in a way that's packaged for you to operate. And you can do that, it's just really containerized versions of all these services. And then the last one is Bitwarden Lite, which we just discovered. And that's what we're going to deploy today on a Raspberry Pi.
And to talk about Linux for a second, most of our images are Alpine-based or distroless. We try to be distroless when possible, just to lower the security footprint of the containers.
Yeah, when we deploy, so we use Kubernetes and in the Azure environment. So we're deploying in containerized images in the Kubernetes environment. And Matt probably can speak a lot more to Kubernetes and how we structure all that. but I think what is the distro that it's like? I think Azure has their own distro or
Yeah,
something.
there's
It's
Azure
like
Linux.
it's like Azure Linux or something like that.
It's a thin
Um,
Alpine essentially.
But you know, we're deploying our cloud infrastructure in Azure, so we play a lot with their services and how because you got to play their game to get the scale that you need in those environments. All right, so now let's get to demo time. So this is where we'll see how wrong things go here, but if it goes well, we'll see. So I'm going to switch to. Let's see, let me get out of this. And let me get over to mirroring my screen, because that'll let me drive a lot faster here. So I'm going to go main display. That is not what I wanted, because now I can't see here.
Go back to that. All right. Yeah.
I got to go from over here now.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to go
Click
here.
the wrong one. Yeah.
I clicked the wrong one. I need this to be main
That's
display.
main. Yeah. Now go back over.
And I need
there.
this to mirror display, right?
Yeah.
There we go. All right, there we go. All right, so let me see, where do I want to start here? Let's start with our documentation. So when you want to deploy Bitwarden in any fashion, whether you use Lite or whatever, the place you need to go is our documentation. Our documentation, and this is my biased opinion, obviously, but is awesome.
It really is great.
We have a whole team of people that are responsible for our documentation. We get a lot of compliments on it. I don't want to brag, but I think it's really great, and we have some really good documentation. So go to bitwarden.com/help. You can search in. There's a whole section for self-hosted. I don't want to click anything because I'm going to screw it up, but I'm going to stay with what I got. But you can find here. We're in the self-host deploy and configure, and we're deploying with Docker on a Lite deployment. So through here, if you go through here, it talks about system requirements, what you need, how do you set it up. So I'm going to go through memory because I kind of know how to do all this, but here's a lot of all the configuration and everything you need to do. Choosing a database, how to configure different database options, and how you would do that. So when I switch over to terminal here, I'm actually on my Pi. Hopefully this is still working, okay? Is that showing up good? Can everybody see that? Is that big enough?
Yeah.
So when I'm on my Pi, I'm in a Bitwarden directory that I've set up here, and I'm going to deploy this through Compose. Compose is just easier because I can keep everything persistent in a file, but you don't have to use Compose. And our documentation talks about how to do all those things. And even in my slides, it showed just doing Docker run. And I think when you get down here, did I already go past it? There it is. Oh, there you go, Docker run. So that's kind of the easiest way you would do it. I'm going to go through a compose method because it's just a little easier in demoing here. So first thing first, let's look at the compose file. So we'll go into here. This is the best editor, right? So when we look at the compose file here, it's pretty simple. So we define services. We got one service, Bitwarden Lite. I'm referencing an environment file here, which we'll look at in just a minute. We're targeting our image. This is the Lite image. I'm targeting our April release, which is outdated at this point. And opening a couple ports and doing a volume map. So really that's it. That's all you need to do in defining, and that's really what the Docker run command does. So I think the next thing to really look is how we kind of configure the deployment, which is really driven through environment variables, and we'll look at in the env file. If you were also not doing a SQLite deployment and you had your other dependencies, you would see things like your database being in here, which you see through comments, MariaDB, or maybe your Nginx server or something like that would also be other deployments. As I mentioned, the standard deployment tried to package all this stuff together. What we understood in Lite deployments is we assumed people would already have these things running in the environment and would want to consume. So it didn't make sense to bundle a database as another process inside the Lite container or bundle your HTTP server inside that. We stripped a lot of stuff out because, and we say kind of bring your own services in some of those cases. So let's look at our settings file. So when we get into the settings file, this is really how you would configure your environment. And there's not a whole lot required to configure here to get up and running. And I'm not going to, but there's a whole lot of knobs you can turn if you wanted to. So really all that's required is just setting what the domain of your server is going to be. And you don't even have to do that. I just put whatever. This isn't how we're going to access it today. I'll access it through the host name or the IP address of the Pi. But you can set up whatever host name you want here. Specify what you want your database to be. So in this case, we're just setting our database provider to be SQLite, and I don't need to do anything else. If you wanted to change the file name of your SQLite database or whatever, you can do that through configuration. There's a lot of sensible defaults that are just you're opted into that are kind of recommendations or what we would assume would be what normal use cases would be of the product. But you can turn all those knobs, and all those are in our documentation. Of course, if you were using a Postgres database, you would have to define some other stuff about accessing that database. If you want to, so Bitwarden can operate in a completely kind of isolated, air-gapped environment that doesn't touch anything outside of that. But that does come with some trade-offs, meaning you lose some level of functionality in the product when you do that with certain clients. Because we do things like ship our mobile apps, for example. Our mobile apps, even so, when you run your self-hosted server, you're not running the clients because, I mean, you could deploy the clients to themselves, but you can run your self-hosted server and then go get the mobile app from the Android store and then connect to your server. So what that means, though, is you're using a mobile app that's still deployed by us as the company of the product. So there are things like when you're using our mobile app, still requires kind of our provisioning, our certificates and other things to sign that app, which means we're responsible for being able to send push notifications to that app. Well, we're not going to give you our push notification certificates on your self-hosted server so you can talk to the app. We can't do that. So we have to do creative other things like proxying through our server push notifications from your self-hosted server down to your client apps. So there's really kind of complicated things that you can still proxy through our cloud-hosted server even when you're using your own self-hosted server.
For the clients, you guys also have, I just noticed, you have what is it,
F-Droid?
no, the web client where you can download on your phone from the web browser.
Yeah, you can run. Progressive web
Okay,
app
yeah.
thing, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is better, like you don't want to download.
Yeah, so a lot of these things are optional.
There's a single-page offline client JavaScript application.
So what I mean when I'm showing some stuff here, I want to talk about this installation ID and key. This is really to allow you to authenticate even with your self-hosted server back to our cloud environment for whenever you need to take advantage of any of those services that we're proxying for you to enable their functionality. This is a completely optional thing it's just kind of a give and take. And as you can see here, I'm not even using a real key or anything that will go back and talk to our server. And it's really not required. But it's required if you want to use certain functionality.
And just to say, because we always get asked, is someone will ask, well, doesn't that mean I can just hack these things so that I can avoid all licensing checks and have 1 million users and not pay for it? Yes, you can. And it's open source. These licensing things are built to suffice, but we absolutely accept that that is what someone may unethically choose to do.
Maybe add support to like something like notify SH in order to chat notifications.
I didn't hear what you said.
We have support for web push. So generally, as a protocol, web push is able to communicate not to every client. So notify SH is just an online push notification service. We've even tried to plug in different options for it, and it tends to be a little bit too clunky, and the experience hasn't been great. So in principle, yes, especially if it's based on either SignalR or web push, it can get you most of it, but it's a little bit of a bring your own model.
Well, you saw we ship our notification service with the self-hosted model. So really that enables a lot of the real-time syncing of clients itself. But there are some things that we can't do, which is mainly on mobile is where it becomes a problem because we're shipping the mobile applications through app stores. And the way you do live push notifications is through proxied services with Google and Apple in those cases, and we have to broker that as the owners of that application on the App Store. So really, I would say really one of the main things driving proxying to our server is push notification. Now, when you get into enterprise scenarios, we also broker synchronizing your billing and licensing and other things like that to your self-hosted server. But even that is optional. You can choose to do that manually. It just is a really pain in the butt to download licensing files and upload it to your server every single time you want to make a change to your subscription and those kind of things. So we offer the ability to kind of synchronize that.
Yeah, so we're an open source product, right? And you can see literally how the licensing logic works. We cryptographically sign our licenses when we give them to somebody, but it doesn't stop some person from modifying the code base to stop those license checks from occurring. So some of this ties around that licensing ecosystem. I just like to put it out there because we get it asked regularly, and that's just the nature of open source.
So let's jump down into some more of the configuration. So as you can, all this stuff is really covered in our documentation, and you can browse through that. Really, all I'm doing here, I'm using all defaults. So in this installation, I am enabling SSL, which is actually default. I don't think I even needed to do that. Here's where we get down to some of the services that I was talking about and driving configuration through there. So you can really turn off all these different components. I would even recommend, actually it shows some of the defaults. So like SCIM and SSO, for example, is not even enabled in a Lite deployment by default because we assume people probably don't need those in normal Lite installations. Events is not even turned on by default, it looks like. So really we try to create like a kind of a bare bones deployment that meets the needs of basic password management usage. We even have this other really interesting one. You can even disable the icons service, and you can proxy that to our cloud if you want. So you can drop that dependency. Now that does create another dependency on our cloud environment to do that. But if you don't want the overhead of running that in your environment because you're trying to make it as small as possible, you can broker that through our cloud environment as well.
And there's a subtlety to that, just to mention it, is we proxy requests for data from third parties. So a malicious website could inadvertently detect that a Bitwarden user was looking at their login for said website if we didn't proxy these kind of things. So we try to be, as Bitwarden, the middleman that you trust, maybe not necessarily the sites that you're logging into.
Yeah, so what Matt means is like, this is kind of a really insignificant feature of the product, but we show an icon next to every item in your vault to make it look nice, right? And to make it identifiable. So when you add, google.com as your item in your vault, we show the Google, we look at the URL of that item, we show the Google icon next to it. Instead of going from your client directly to Google to get their icon, that would allow Google to prey on people and understand maybe they're using Bitwarden because we see these hits coming in for our favicon, and we can see we proxy all that through Bitwarden service. So Bitwarden is the one going to Google and seeing it, and you're going to Bitwarden for it. It also allows us to scale it a lot easier and cache all those things, and not like DDoS some poor person's website by everybody going and fetching favicons from it all the time.
I'd say our cache is like most of the internet's favicons.
Yeah.
So on that note, say I do want to squeeze as much performance out of this packet as I can, but I do not want to use the proxy service. Can I just turn off?
Yeah, that's the other option you have too. So you could turn off the favicon. There's even settings in your clients that will stop the clients from trying to go get the icon. So if you just turn it off, the clients will still try to go get it, but it'll just 404 every time it tries to go get a client, which is going to just still be spamming your server with a bunch of requests. But you can also just turn the feature off in a client so it doesn't even try to go fetch an icon, and it'll just show a static icon depending on what type of item it is in your vault.
I don't know. Can we change cache settings in
uh,
Docker if we post?
I don't know, actually. I'm sure you can. You could, yeah, you could. I mean, if you're running the Nginx proxy that's in front of these services, you could tune them however you want to, any of those requests coming in. I don't think the icon service itself does any kind of special caching. Maybe it does. I think we return some sensible headers so that clients will try to cache it in a certain way.
And some performance features we generally just use for our cloud anyway because it's insignificant. You don't want to run a Redis instance to deal with the kind of things that we have to deal with, so it generally doesn't matter.
For personal usage, it's not that.
Yeah.
So here really, all I'm really configuring in this example is a domain and a database. That's all this file's doing. There's a bunch of other stuff in here, but for the purposes of deploying to the Pi, I also threw a couple of maybe I don't say undocumented. I don't know if they're documented or not, but they're ones I know about because I didn't want to deal with making emails work and other things. So I disabled features that would send emails that would break our demo. But normally, when you deploy this, you would configure an SMTP server for your email server so that the server can send out emails for new device logins and those kind of things. But I just turned off emails for the purposes of our demo by setting a couple of these environment variable settings at the bottom. So that's really it. So we have a compose file and we have a settings file. Now I can just simply say docker compose up, and we'll detach. And the server will now come online. So when the server comes online, I want to just kind of switch into our data folder here. So as you saw in my, you do need persistent mapping of data in some way, whether you want to use a volume map or map it to disk. In this case, I'm mapping to disk so we can explore it a lot easier. So these are kind of the data that the Bitwarden server persists. We have some stuff in here like certificates and encryption keys. So data protection is, if you're familiar with .NET, ASP.NET, there's a data protection library that helps you encrypt stuff and manage keys on the server and whatever a server application is needing to do. We have an identity certificate that is used for signing all the JWT tokens and things that happen from the identity server.
This is not the user level encryption, to be clear. It's
No.
just the stuff that it's a multi-layer approach towards protecting what is on disk, not what you as the user.
Yeah, so server does things like will sign, you get, oftentimes you'll get an email that says like, click here to verify your email or whatever, right? Well, that's the server sending you a signed token for you to click to do something. So you need to do some encryption and like sign a token to go in an email. Our server does all kinds of stuff like that too. That's just normal web application stuff. So ASP.NET's data protection library helps us do those kind of things. We have logs in here. So if you wanted to go to the logs directory, you can see log files for all the different services that are running. If you're troubleshooting something or whatever. Where are we at on time, Matt? We probably need to get going here. And then you see SSL keys in our SQLite database. So by this time, our server should be up and running. We see our nice one Lite container running. So let's see if we can now access the server. So this is just accessing from the IP address. So now we're talking to the Pi with a Bitwarden instance up and running. I've taken it upon myself to go ahead and already register an account and things on this service. But now I can log in. My Uber secret password, which is 123456789.
And this is one of those key pieces of user-specific information. So he, as a human being, knows that master password. All the cryptography is happening offline in a JavaScript client on his machine and not sending any of that data in any way to the server.
Yeah, so a lot of people, so in the web vault here, a lot of people don't understand how websites work. I'm sure a lot of you do. But when you visit a website, you download essentially a client to your machine, and your machine's running. This is a single-page Angular application, is what our web vault is. So this is essentially a client that I downloaded from a website that's running in my browser. So it's a self-contained end-to-end encrypted application that's just talking to the server in a web browser environment, just like my browser extension or mobile app and other things might do.
Yeah.
So here I am in this server. I can access items in my vault. I can edit them. I can save them. And everything's working through talking to the Pi. So and as simple as that, you can have a Bitwarden instance running through a containerized Lite deployment.
And just to say it, he's using the on-disk Docker method. You really don't want to do that. Please put it on something that's backed up, like a network volume. SQLite is literally a single file, a .db file. So everything is in one file for your entire encrypted vault that the server stores. It's really, really important.
Can you elaborate a bit about the folders versus vaults?
Folders versus like what the folder concept is inside the vault.
Oh.
Metadata. Honestly, it's not much more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a whole lot to learn about Bitwarden, the product itself, and yeah, folders and vaults. Folders are just a way to organize things in your vault. So this is the vault view of Bitwarden with a few items stored in it.
And we go with a blob-based approach, so everything is just one
So
opaque piece of data.
if I wanted to create a new folder, I could say I create a new folder Linux, and I could move this item. I could edit it. And I'm trying to remember how you organize stuff in a folder here. Oh, there it is at the top. So now when I go to my Linux folder, there's my Jack stuff.
And enterprises have a million other features around.
There's a million other features in Bitwarden. You know, when you get into organizations and enterprise management, this is just a basic consumer view of the product. So let's switch back because I want to wrap up here soon. So now that we're running, really, there's a few things to still consider. What we did here is just a LAN-only deployment, really simple. There's some other considerations you want to put a reverse proxy in front of this thing. This is just exposing the .NET HTTP server directly to the LAN, which is fine for LAN, but not what you would want to do in real world. You want to make sure you have a kind of a production grade HTTP server in front of that. I use Nginx at home in what I do. Or you could expose it with a Cloudflare tunnel or something like that. It is all possible. TLS, so HTTPS is a requirement of Bitwarden, not just because it's secure, but our product will cease to function without HTTPS running in it. And that's because we use crypto APIs in the browser to do all this encryption stuff, and browsers actually disable those APIs if you're not in HTTPS. So the product will just break if you tried to use it without HTTPS. And it might work in some scenarios, but you're not going to have an actual working solution. So make sure you have HTTPS. In our example here, I had just a self-signed certificate running in what we're doing. You may want to consider things around hardening the server with firewalls and fail to ban on your on your exposed instances, or maybe turning that admin portal, not exposing that to the internet because it doesn't really need to be on the internet. Those kind of things are all considerations to make that you could choose to do at the proxy layer of your server. Obviously, I think a lot of this goes without saying, but when you self-host things, you need to account for all those ops things we talked about in the beginning: backing up, updates, recovery capabilities, all those things, and make sure you're planning for failure in all those ways. Especially if you're running on a Raspberry Pi, where you could corrupt the SD card pretty easily in that. I really wanted to. How long do we have here? I don't know how long this normally goes. Okay, good. Well, I think this was really interesting to you guys as just a client, so I want to show another client. So we were in the Web Vault. Okay, good. I've only got like 2 more slides. So I wanted to show just our CLI. So the CLI is another client that we offer in our product. And you can do everything you can do in other clients as far as vault management and managing your Bitwarden, you can do in the terminal interface with our CLI tools. So in this case, we still have our Pi up and running with Bitwarden operating on it. I have the Bitwarden CLI installed on my machine here, which is just through the BW command. But I need to configure this client. So by default, all our clients talk to our cloud service, just because that's how most people use our product. But I need to config the CLI to talk to this server we just, so I can, this is kind of a one-time configuration you have to do on your client to make it talk to, I believe, hopefully that should work. So now my CLI client is configured to not talk to Bitwarden Cloud Service. It's configured to talk to my Pi running over here. And if I run BW status, I should be able to see that my server URL is using that, and I'm currently unauthenticated. So now I need to log in, and hopefully this works. I'll log into my same account that I was just using in the web, and failed my certificate, so it's not going to work. So the self-signed certificate I have is was using a host name, and we changed IP addresses and everything when we came here, so it's not gonna like it. Go ahead.
Okay, we're not sure which one of you we want. So the thing that excites me the most about CLI is potentially like anything logging into the unfortunately authenticated password. How feasible is type the output of this into a terminal's request for a password?
It's built into the product, actually.
Do you have an SSH agent?
We have an SSH agent built in. It ships with the desktop application. There's a myriad of other ways to utilize it as well, but the primary path is the desktop app. Yeah. It's a setting. Just turn it on.
In the list of commands that you had in your other screen.
Yeah, let's go back. So I was going to demo some of this. It's really cool, but I'm probably not going to be able to solve this in the moment. So let's switch to our documentation of the CLI, which really talks about what the CLI is. So our CLI is a fully featured client of the product, and as I mentioned, can do everything all our other clients can do. People use this tool for a lot of stuff. You know, if your day-to-day is living in a terminal, I'm sure it's really great. But you can also script and build. There are people who have built entirely new Bitwarden desktop applications that use the CLI under the hood to power them. So they just created like a new interface, but the CLI is kind of the tool that's doing all the functionality, and they're just calling into the CLI to run commands.
Especially sysadmins that need to manage large organizations.
So doing things like BW lists all items in your vault, and this talks about how to get all the things. Here's all the commands. So
and if you're into AI, there's an MCP server for this. We strongly recommend, of course, that you put the right security controls around that, but you can use all of these things through an AI tool.
You want my password to go through that.
yeah.
Yeah, which is clearly what you probably don't want to orchestrate with an AI tool.
So our CLI tool can really, you know, you could build CI workflows that the CLI tool uses to go fetch a password to do something. You can automate something on your system in the back end that has a CLI. You could build a whole new desktop client that the CLI uses under the hood to do it. But you can really look up and fetch any items in your vault, get passwords, do whatever you want to do through the CLI. And the way you do that would be configuring this thing. There was an environment variable I know I could set to ignore self-signed certificate errors, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head.
We have a secrets manager offering as well, so that's a separate CLI. We just call it BWS, but it's a little bit more DevOps friendly.
Yep. So here's just an example of maybe how you might consider using a use case of the CLI. You can get password, pipe it into your clipboard. I'm sorry?
Well, the CLI is written in TypeScript. A lot of our clients are a TypeScript core, but we have a Rust-based SDK, and we're converting the CLI to Rust. Yeah. Yeah, it's a part of what he's running. It's just not necessarily enabled.
Yeah, Secrets Manager is running on here too. It's just a whole nother product within the same server.
At the end of the day, Bitwarden, the non-consumer side is that it is a vault of any sort of data that you want to place in it. We have use cases that we don't make consumer-friendly features, but you can put whatever you want inside a vault item and manage it. So a secret, a password, a credit card, an SSH key, all those things.
All right, I think that's really, I want to just recap some of the resources that are covered here. Our Help Center, that's our documentation. That's where you go to learn how to do all this and can follow a guide. Our GitHub repositories are there. Everything you've seen here today is hosted on GitHub and is open source. And you can browse the source code. You can make contributions, open issues, whatever you want to do. We have a community. That's community.bitwarden.com is just our message board for the company. It's where we interact with a lot of customers and those kind of things. We also extend our community way outside of that. We have a huge Reddit subreddit with over 100,000 users that are on there. X, whatever, Mastodon, whatever kind of social platform you want to interact with us on. If you want to reach me, my website and email address is listed there. Feel free to take a picture of the screen so you can reference it in the future. And those are all the resources. And that's it. So, yeah, let's open it up to a couple questions. We had a couple questions, so I don't know if there's any kind of wanted to. It can be about Bitwarden or the presentation or me or anything. Oh.
Has there been more of an issue with LLMs with the bug bounty back on one, or are you guys
Oh.
doing a lot more
Yeah.
beyond bug
It's not so, there was a junk phase, but AI got pretty good pretty quickly, especially when you have an open source code base. So I manage an application security group as well, and they have probably 5 times as much work to do with just submission management. Often legitimate issues. Not legitimate as in they're a problem for us, but something that has real legs that isn't just slop.
Are you worried about all of the extras? Because if you have a legitimate issue, but not actually that big of an issue, like you worried about like security, like big issues going unfound because of that? Because
As Kyle said, like it's the zero knowledge element of the platform that really helps us sidestep away from any true risk because we don't have the ability to do something with your data even if we wanted to. So we do get a significant mitigation from most things, which makes us a lower value attack surface. I'd say we're like a reverse honeypot, if anything, is that someone already has compromised data and they're trying to correlate it against Bitwarden data in some kind of enumerated way. Those are the sorts of things we deal with at an infrastructure.
Usually, the type of attacks that we see the most are not people going and trying to like crack your vault data.
Awesome.
It's about trying to do social engineering things and manipulate parts of our product that progress a social engineering attack or somehow masquerade as some official communication from our product or phishing or anything like that. I would say both, but primarily against our users. It would be really what they're trying to do. Yeah. Yeah. Another type of attack we see a lot is just brute force. Even though I said in there a compromised server doesn't equal a compromised vault. That's only if you're taking proper precautions like having an actual strong password, or something like that. If your password's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 as it was here, you could easily just brute force that even if you had the encrypted data that the server has, right? So.
And we push our users to we make them push the needle essentially, even with that password we enter with the crypto behind it. We do. Yeah.
We do, yeah. So we do a lot, not just storing your passwords, but a lot of the value add around our product is trying to make you more secure, right? So we tell you when you have compromised passwords, when you're reusing passwords, weak passwords, all those things, especially in an enterprise setting. We're trying to expand that even now to an enterprise sysadmin to manage the passwords of their whole workforce and make sure people have strong passwords and are doing things the right way. Yeah, we have a whole list of policies that really help administrators control how the product's used and what users can do and what they can't do, and really helps, again, control a workforce of people using the product for password management.
The enterprise world is some companies have the information of forcing people to rotate passwords or having that in the app to nudge them instead of just sending emails that people.
Yeah, so we have a really interesting feature in our product. We call it Access Intelligence, which is really enabling a system administrator to not just see where problems are in the product, but or with their user base, but help them resolve them. And so if you have weak passwords, it's great. Well, I have 1,000 weak passwords in my organization. What am I supposed to do with that? We have Access Intelligence feature allows you to push that work down to your users to go fix them in a lot of ways. So it's like you can notify all your users, and users have to-do tasks to do to go resolve all these weak passwords.
Because
Instead
we
of,
can't do it.
yeah, we can't do it for you. Your sysadmin might be able to do it, but he doesn't want to do it. So you, as users, need to do it. Let me pester you, and so we have a lot of tools for doing those kind of things. I saw a hand over here. Yeah. So it's something that we've started the early stages of. We don't have it today, but we're planning for it.
Yeah, we're pretty close.
We're pretty close. So we have that's mostly on what the encryption v2 work that we're doing.
Yeah.
So we're kind of overhauling a lot of the guts of how encryption works in our product today, and it's precisely to enable plugging in new quantum resistant algorithms and those kind of things.
The certificates for quantum? Oh.
That's quantum.
Yeah, so NIST has settled on Cha-Cha Poly 1309, something like that. I can't remember the algorithm set, but that's kind of what we're rolling with. And
Well, the certificates and things are all on your side. So if you're talking about
Yeah,
your own keys,
yeah.
they're your certificates
Yeah.
in some ways. But
yeah, we're not going to let you bring your own crypto algorithm in most respects.
but yeah, we're planning for that, and as is everyone, I think, or maybe not everyone, but a lot. You should be.
Because the risk, to me at least, is that it's a harvest now, decrypt later, and so that's why we're trying to get this in.
Yeah.
How do you guys balance community contributions to the product with product roadmaps from the company? Because I know, like, as your for-profit company, there's obviously
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Someone comes in and says, like, "Oh, here's a feature; it'll fix your product." And
Yeah.
then,
So it's a constant balance we had to find. To be honest, we don't get a ton of people like trying to build our product for us, and that's probably because we're a company that's making money. Like, why would I go do that? But people do, especially in the early days. We had a lot of people submitting things, and it was great. A lot of our engineers and people who work at our company were previous contributors to our product. So we've had a lot of success in hiring contributors and people that do want to make Bitwarden better. A lot of the value of what a lot of our community brings is feature requests and feedback and community kind of sentiment and understanding what's important in making the product better. But we do get features built by people, and some of them have been implemented in our product. For example, when we implemented a new key derivation function, Argon 2, into our product, that was built by a community member that we worked with. Usually they'll come to us with a first kind of version of a PR, and we'll have to work closely with them to refine it because they don't understand all of our engineering processes and other things here. But it happens, and we welcome it.
Feel free to submit a PR.
Yeah.
I'm always using multiple devices, like on my laptop and phone at the same time. How do you synchronize? Is it like a public contractual model, or is it like, how do you like
Yeah, so
on phone and on laptop? Like,
yeah. I don't know if you were here, but we have a notification. Notification service that runs as part of our server. It's running SignalR and connecting to push WebSockets and connecting to push notification servers on the mobile side, and we basically orchestrate that through our notification service and synchronizing client data in real time.
And there's a sentinel value essentially, so our clients know how to fix those things. And so if a cipher has been updated elsewhere, but the cache version was out of date and you made an edit, says there's a conflict, like we deal with all that.
Are you guys independent, or have there been any recent acquisitions? No. Have there been anybody out?
People trying to buy us? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would like to try to buy us. We're a pretty successful company at this stage. No, we haven't. I mean, we don't have any inbound of people trying to buy the company or anything like that today. It's not really in our roadmap in the future at the moment.
Thank you, guys. Want to say thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.